have you noticed in the famous hadith that speaks about the 7 people whom Allah will shade on the Day of Judgment? Most of them, if not all of them, share one thing. They have one thing in common. If you think about it, they are people of muraqabah. Who are the 7? You remember the hadith, right? The famous Bukhari and Muslim narration on the authority of Abu Hurairah. That the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, سَبْعَةٌ يُظِلُّهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي ظِلِّهِ يَوْمَ لَا ظِلَّ إِلَّا ظِلُّهُ. There are 7 categories of people who will be shaded on the Day of Judgment when there is no shade but His. Who are they? Count with me. Number 1. Who was the first? Al-Imam al-Adil. Yeah, chronologically they say, or he said, it is the just ruler. The just what? Ruler. Why was he just? Did he need to be just? No, because he is a ruler. Sovereignty is in his hands. Authority of the land is with him. So he doesn't need to be just, but he is just. Why? Because of his muraqabah of Allah. He doesn't need to be, but the watchful eye of Allah that He knows is upon him pushes him to be just on the land. Muraqabah, it goes back to it. What is the second of the 2? Second of the 7? He said, وَشَابٌ نَشَأَ بِعِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ. A young man who grew up in the worship of Allah. May Allah make every one of you, dear brothers and sisters, amongst this category. A young Muslim who grows up in the worship of Allah. What made him or her grow up in the worship of Allah? When desires had reached an all-time high and energy is at a peak, and whatever you ask of your body, it will fulfill it for you, because health is on your side, vitality is on your side, the future is on your side. But they suppress all of that. They keep it at bay and they worship Allah. What made them do that? It is muraqabah, their watchfulness of Allah. That's number 2. Number 3, what was the third of the 7? رجلان أو رجل قلبه معلق بالمساجد. A person whose heart is hung in the masjid. A person whose heart is hung in the masjid. He didn't say a person who lives in the masjid or a person who is always in the masjid. That would be difficult. But the heart is there. So every opportunity you have, you go back. What is it that pushed him or her to the masjid each and every time? It is the muraqabah of Allah, the watchfulness of Allah. The heart is there. And then number 4, he said, رَجُلَانِ تَحَابَّا فِي اللَّهِ اجْتَمَعَا عَلَيْهِ وَتَفَرَّقَا عَلَيْهِ. 2 people who loved each other purely for the sake of Allah. They come together for His sake and they depart for His sake. It is for the sake of Allah, muraqabah. They're doing it for Him. There's no mutual interest. They don't support the same football team. They may not even speak the same dialect. But they love each other. Why? Because of their Lord. They're watching Him. And then he said, number 5, وَرَجُلٌ دَعَتْهُ امْرَأَةٌ ذَاتُ مَنْصِبٍ وَجَمَالٍ فَقَالَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. And a man who was seduced by a beautiful and high-ranking woman to fornicate. And he said, I can't do that, I fear Allah. So the situation is perfect. The beauty is there and the status is there, meaning the ability to cover up the crime is there, and nevertheless he said, I fear Allah. How come? Because of his muraqabah, his watchfulness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you see? It's all going back to the same concept. Ajib. And then number 6, وَرَجُلٌ تَصَدَّقَ بِصَدَقَةٍ فَأَخْفَاهَا حَتَّى لَا تَعْلَمُ شِمَالُهُ مَا تُنْفِقُ يَمِينُهُ. A person who gives out a charity so secretly that his left hand doesn't know what his right hand gave. And in another narration, his right hand doesn't know what his left hand gave. Why did he do that? Why is he hiding it from one hand to the other? Because he's aware of the watchful eye of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It goes back to the same concept. And number 7, what was number 7? رَجُلٌ ذَكَرَ اللَّهَ خَالِيًا فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ. And a person who remembers Allah all by himself. She remembers Him all by herself. And their eyes begin to weep. What brought those tears? It wasn't an emotional nasheed. It wasn't looking at somebody else who was weeping. It wasn't a tragedy. Nothing induced those tears except his or her muraqabah of Allah. Do you see how Allah gives them shade on Yawm al-Qiyamah? Really, brothers, as I was thinking, subhanAllah, this morning when I was looking at this information, it's so easy to just consume this as data, as text. And I encourage you to write. And I'm sad to see that it's only, inshallah, a growing minority who are writing. But this is a tragedy. But the real challenge is to convert this theory into a vivid reality in your life. What does it mean to be shaded on Yawm al-Qiyamah when there is no shade but His? I mean, it's only 50,000 years long that day, and the sun is only a mile away from our heads, and people will perspire according to their deeds. The people of Muraqabah are blessed with what? They are established on the land. And they are what? They taste the sweetness of Iman. And they, what? They are blessed with shade on the Day of Judgment. All because they are constantly aware, completely cognizant of the eye of Allah that never sleeps.